Is it possible that a date standing silently in the middle of the world's major cities is actually hiding a secret pulse far greater than what meets the eye? The question sounds excessive, even almost conspiratorial. Yet that is precisely what began echoing in the minds of millions of ARMY when a simple billboard reading, BTS March 20, 2026, appeared without warning in the most strategic urban centers around the globe. There was no photo, no face, no individual name. And yet, somehow, one name continued to reverberate throughout increasingly heated online conversations: Jungkook in London Leicester Square, a symbolic space of the global entertainment industry, became the first witness to the appearance of the three red circle symbol styled as O=O, long associated with BTS's visual language. In Seoul, a similar billboard lit up near the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts, not merely a performance venue but a center of cultural authority and artistic legitimacy in South Korea. However, what drew the most attention occurred thousands of kilometers away in Japan, specifically at Shibuya Scramble Crossing and Ebisu Station. Here is where the narrative shifted. Here is where suspicion began to transform into speculation that could no longer be ignored. Shibuya is not just a district. It is a living algorithm of global pop culture, a place where trends are born, tested, and immortalized. Almost every promotional move that takes place in Shibuya is designed to generate worldwide resonance. So when the BTS billboard appeared there, ARMY immediately understood that this was not an ordinary promotion. Too precise, too silent, too restrained. There was no teaser video, no countdown, no follow-up announcement, only a date. And precisely because of that, the questions grew even larger. Big Hit Music had indeed officially confirmed on January 1, 2026, that BTS would make their comeback on March 20th. The statement was brief, formal, and tightly controlled. Yet history has taught fans that BTS rarely operates on a single layer of meaning. There is always a second layer, a third, and often the deepest layer is conveyed through symbols, locations, and timing. Thus the questions began to circulate. If this were merely an album promotion, why Shibuya? Why now? And why appear so quietly, as if not wanting to draw attention, yet placed in a spot that is practically impossible to ignore? Online discussions grew not because of official statements, but because of fragmented clues collectively assembled by ARMY. The fan account at Tuxovers on X became one of the early triggers, sharing photos of billboards from various cities around the world. Within hours, the post was flooded with thousands of likes and reposts, accompanied by emotional comments such as, "BTS is coming," and "This is not a coincidence." Yet amid the euphoria, a different tone emerged, quieter, more serious, and bolder. "Why Japan?" one user asked. "Why Shibuya?" another responded. And without any formal agreement, the discussion narrowed toward a possibility that felt wild yet increasingly plausible. Was Jungkook being prepared for something not listed on the public agenda? Jungkook's name never appeared in any promotional material. But it was precisely this absence that fueled suspicion. Jungkook is widely known as the BTS member with the broadest cross-industry appeal, a massive and loyal fanbase in Japan, and a reputation as a performer capable of creating viral moments without any official planning. In the context of the modern entertainment industry, Jungkook is not merely an idol, he is a catalyst. Every appearance, no matter how small, generates waves of resonance. It is therefore only natural that ARMY began to ask, does it make sense for Japan, particularly Shibuya, to serve merely as a passive backdrop for group promotion, with no individual surprise in store? The speculation intensified when several Japanese fans claimed to notice increased technical activity around the billboard locations, ranging from the installation of additional equipment to restricted areas at certain hours. There was no confirmation, no denial. Yet in the BTS universe, silence often speaks louder than official statements. Moreover, BTS's comeback history is always marked by unexpected moments. Surprise appearances, hidden teasers, and promotional strategies whose meanings are only fully understood after everything unfolds. Within this landscape, March 20th no longer stands as an endpoint, but as a gateway, a psychological threshold that makes the days leading up to it feel increasingly tense. If a surprise is indeed coming, it must happen before that date. And if a sudden solo appearance is truly being whispered about within the ARMY community, then Jungkook is the only figure both logical and explosive enough to ignite it. Still, the question remains suspended, refusing a simple answer. Is this merely the collective imagination of fans who have waited too long? Or are we witnessing the opening chapter of the boldest strategy HYB has ever executed? A scenario in which BTS's comeback does not begin on March 20th, but long before it, quietly, through one name, one city, and one moment destined to be remembered as a turning point. What is certain is this. Since the billboard lit up in Shibuya, the atmosphere has never been the same. ARMY around the world feel an unease that is difficult to explain. A mixture of hope, fear, and intuition that something is moving behind the scenes. And if BTS's history has taught us anything, it is this. When everything feels too calm, that is usually where the biggest surprise is hiding. If it is true that every BTS promotional strategy is always designed like a layered narrative, then Shibuya is not a random backdrop chosen merely for aesthetic appeal, but an important chapter in a storyline being quietly constructed. In studies of visual communication and global pop culture marketing, the choice of location is not simply about human density, but about collective memory, symbolic identity, and cross-border emotional resonance. And among all the cities in the world, Shibuya possesses one unmatched power. It is a global intersection, not only geographically but culturally. Shibuya Scramble Crossing is a space where millions of people pass through every day, but more than that, it is a living stage long used by the international entertainment industry to deliver messages without uttering a single word. From music releases and film trailers to major collaboration announcements, Shibuya often serves as a test wave, a place where an idea is organically tested before being released to the world. So when BTS's symbol appeared there without further explanation, an academic question inevitably emerged. What message is being conveyed, and to whom is it actually directed? Japanese ARMY, known for their meticulous attention to detail and heightened sensitivity to nuance, began connecting this phenomenon with past patterns. They recalled how during the solo project era, Jungkook was often positioned at the center of the boldest promotional experiments. Not because he sought individual spotlight, but because of his role as a bridge between group identity and the global market. Jungkook is a figure who can stand in the middle, independent enough to command solo attention, yet inherently tied to always redirect the focus back to BTS as a collective. This is where speculation began to change form. It was no longer simply, will there be a surprise? But what kind of surprise would make strategic sense? If BTS's fifth studio album is scheduled for release on March 20, 2026, at 1 p.m. Korea Standard Time, then the days leading up to it represent the most critical phase, not for building expectation alone, but for cultivating emotion. And in modern marketing theory, one of the most effective ways to maximize the impact of a major release is to create a pre-peak moment. An event that is not announced, not publicly scheduled, yet powerful enough to ignite global conversation. The question then shifts. Which figure is the most logical catalyst for such a moment? The answer keeps resurfacing, even without being officially stated, and it consistently points to Jungkook. He has a track record as a spontaneous performer, a vocal reputation recognized across genres, and an exceptionally strong fan base in Japan. Beyond that, Jungkook is also known as the BTS member most often used as a silent signal. His presence frequently marks the opening of a new chapter rather than its conclusion. Interestingly, up to this point, HYB has chosen to remain silent.
No clarificación, no denial, no diversión.
In the entertainment industry, silence of this nature is rarely neutral. It is usually strategic, especially when album pre-orders are set to open on January 16, 2026, at 11 a.m. Korea Standard Time, just days after the billboards appeared and speculation reached its peak. The timing feels far too precise to be mere coincidence. On social media, the narrative has begun to split. On one side, there are ARMY trying to temper expectations, reminding others that not every symbol must lead to an individual surprise. On the other side, however, the wave of collective intuition continues to strengthen. They cite BTS's history, previous promotional patterns, and even choose to read the silence itself as a form of text. In modern fandom discourse, silence from authority often becomes the most fertile and most honest, Space for interpretation. It cannot be denied that this BTS comeback carries a far heavier emotional weight than previous eras. This is not just a new album, but the return of a complete formation after nearly 4 years of hiatus due to mandatory military service. This period has transformed BTS both as individuals and as a collective entity. Solo projects, individual achievements, and personal musical explorations have expanded their spectrum of identity. And amid all of this, Jungkook has emerged as the figure most frequently associated with transition between past and future, between group identity and globalization. So when ARMY asked whether a sudden solo stage might occur before March 20th, the question no longer feels implausible. Instead, it feels like a logical consequence of all the scattered clues. A brief performance, perhaps not broadcast, perhaps witnessed by only a handful of people, yet powerful enough to shake global conversation. A moment not announced but later claimed as part of history. And if that were to happen, its impact would extend far beyond momentary sensation. It would shift how the public understands BTS's comeback, that their return did not begin on the release date, but at the moment when the world first felt the tremor. A tremor faint, ambiguous, and almost invisible except to those willing to look deeper. To this point, one thing has become clear. Shibuya is no longer merely a promotional location. It has become a symbol of mounting tension before something larger unfolds. And Jungkook, regardless of whether a sudden solo appearance actually happens, has become the gravitational center of this narrative. The question now is no longer if, but when and how. Because if BTS history repeats itself, the biggest surprises almost always arrive at the moment when the public stops expecting, and instead begins to sense that something is being hidden in plain sight. At this point, the question repeatedly echoing in ARMY's mind is no longer simply whether a sudden solo appearance might happen, but what such a possibility would mean for the history of BTS as a whole. Because if Jungkook were to appear, even just once, even without any official announcement, that moment would signify something far greater than album promotion. It would become a signal, a quiet statement that the new era of BTS no longer moves in straight, predictable lines, but instead unfolds through layers, surprises, and deliberately sustained uncertainty. And contemporary pop culture studies, the most effective surprises are often not those designed to be seen by everyone, but those ambiguous enough to be debated. A brief appearance by Jungkook, for instance, would not need to take the form of a full concert. It could surface as a collaboration that happens by chance, as a voice heard amid the crowd, or even as a fleeting visual captured only by a fan's camera before disappearing. It is precisely this limitation that gives such a moment its value. Rarity creates myth, and myth always survives longer than facts that are made too explicit. ARMY's emotions move through complex territory. There is hope left unspoken so it does not turn into disappointment. There is unease intertwined with excitement. And there is also the fear that all of this may simply be a collective imagination born from prolonged waiting. Yet beneath that doubt lies one awareness that is almost universally shared. If HYB and Big Hit are choosing such a silent path, then they know exactly what they are building. BTS never simply returns. They always redefine what returning means. Jungkook, in this context, stands as the most powerful symbol of that transition. He is the youngest member, now poised on the threshold of full artistic maturity, carrying both the weight of expectation and a new sense of freedom. After solo projects and individual achievements during the hiatus, the public no longer views Jungkook merely as part of BTS, but as a complete artistic entity in his own right. Thus, if he were chosen as the emotional catalyst ahead of the group's comeback, that choice would feel not only strategic but almost inevitable. The global impact of a single small event could be immense. International media would not linger on whether the appearance was official or not. What would be recorded is the reaction. The narrative would move swiftly, from Shibuya to London, from Tokyo to New York, from fan forums to global entertainment headlines. Within hours, speculation would turn into digital archives, revisited, analyzed, and cited whenever people discuss the BTS 2026 comeback. Yet interestingly, even if such an appearance never happens, the situation itself already reveals one undeniable truth: the power of BTS, and of Jungkook in particular, to shake the world through silence alone, through symbols alone, through a presence that is felt rather than shown. In an era when the entertainment industry is often overly transparent and predictable, this kind of strategy feels almost radical. It demands patience, intuition, and deep emotional engagement from its audience. As March 20th approaches, time feels different for ARMY. Each day is no longer merely a countdown toward an album, but an expanding space of speculation. If a surprise truly occurs, that date will be remembered as the peak of attention built with meticulous care. But if it does not, then the tension itself has already become part of the comeback experience. And perhaps that is where the true brilliance lies. Because in the end, BTS does not simply sell music. They create collective experiences. They make millions of people across the world feel connected by the same emotion: curiosity, hope, and readiness to receive a surprise that may never arrive, yet always feels close. And amid all of this, one question will remain suspended, even after March 20th has passed. Are we truly witnessing a leak of Jungkook's secret schedule, or are we instead watching how a legend is built through silence? And it is precisely there that the most intriguing paradox of this entire situation resides. When the calendar finally reaches March 20th and BTS's fifth album is officially released to the public, many may assume that the tension has come to an end. Yet for ARMY, that curiosity may well outlive the music itself. Every visual fragment, every interview, every moment of silence that feels slightly off will be pulled back to the moment before everything began: Shibuya, the faceless billboard, and the name Jungkook that was never mentioned yet endlessly discussed. And if one day it is revealed that there truly was a plan, or even just a notion, of a sudden appearance that was later cancelled or deliberately obscured, then this moment will be reread as proof that BTS and their team have always operated in territory far deeper than mere industry mechanics. They construct narratives that allow fans to participate in writing their own meanings. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of this comeback. Not simply the songs or the sales figures, but the feeling that the world paused just for a moment to ask, what was it that almost happened?